Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our weekly call for community solutions hosted by the Forbes Funds and GPNP. For those of you who haven't joined us before, our team has hosted these community calls weekly since March of 2020 to provide nonprofits with critical resources and updates, a shared space to discuss challenges, a snapshot of relevant policies, and timely insight from subject matters in our network. Since that time, the Forbes Funds and GPNP have hosted 5,526 meetings with the participation of over 47,242 dedicated community members. And we continue to hear from members that this time remains valuable for discussing emergent needs and opportunities for the social impact sector. We do all of our work utilizing a dual framework that draws on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the social determinants of health, to align cross-sector and guide the outcomes of our work. Additionally, the 8 returns model guides how we measure the success or returns on various forms of investment. So just a couple housekeeping items for today's call. We really encourage you to go ahead and use the chat function to share your name and organization out with the group. As well as any comments or questions you might have along the way during today's call, we'll be sure to circle back and get those questions answered. We also strongly encourage you to join us on screen to maximize engagement for today's call. And for those of you who are unable to join us on camera, thank you for joining while you're in transit this morning. We'll reserve time, again, as I mentioned, for a Q&A after our speaker presentation, followed by a Forbes Funds GPNP ecosystem update and a public policy recap. And a final friendly reminder that there will be a poll at the end of the call. We ask that you complete that so we can keep our content and resources relevant to you all. So today we are very excited to talk about ARC, the Antiracism Cohort 3.0. This is our 3rd round. ARC 3.0 is a learning cohort that builds on the best practices of diversity, equity, and inclusion training and optimizes these core practices into human-centered design exercises that aid in shifting organizational cultures systemically. So during our call today, you'll hear a lot more about our curriculum, the structure of the programs, and the different outcomes. And we're so lucky to be joined today by Anita Russell, Dr. Jessica Spradley, and Rebecca Gilmer, along with our teammate Brianna Stalder. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Fred to kick off our call, and then we'll hear about ARC.
Morning, everyone. I'm excited to be on today, in particular to talk about ARC in this 3rd iteration. We're excited about the partnership we have with Dr. Merritt, Rebecca, and of course, Mrs. Russell. The work has been very powerful with regards to addressing systemic issues, concerns, and methodologies. As we were talking before we got on the call, all of us should be aware of over the next 1,460 days with the new administration, there may be some impacts to some of the work we've been doing over the last 5 to 6 years, in particular that work that encompasses Black Lives Matter and people of color. Given that, my suggestion with people is to be what we call in our system is have situational awareness, look at how your work is meaningful to the sector, identifying partners that are still committed to the work. We think the work is imperative to create an equilibrium that works for all, but we're also aware of the challenges and risks in some instances that this might take for organizations. We in no way are telling people to not do the work, but we also are telling people how to be agile and iterative and to explore multiple ways of achieving that work through the constructs that provide them with the greatest amount of support. Over the past couple of weeks, we've all been talking to organizations and institutions that have historically supported this work, as well as those who are now looking at that work at the university level, at the corporate level, at the nonprofit level. And so I would just ask that we all take into account how we need to be courageous in this moment and how we need to look at sustainable partnerships that are committed to this work through multiple lenses. So I thank everybody for being on this morning. I'm looking forward to a great conversation and presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred. I will go ahead and pass it over to Bree.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Fred. As both of them mentioned, we are launching our 3rd iteration of the Antiracism Cohort. And to backtrack, hi, everyone. I'm Brianna Stalder. I'm the Sustainability and Social Impact Manager here at the Forbes Funds. I've been working closely with the ARC team internally to kind of get and kind of fine tune the last cohort. We're getting ready to launch again the third iteration of ARC in the next couple weeks. So just wanted to take the time to touch base with everybody and hear from the ARC core team about the cohort structure, curriculum, and answer any of your questions that you might have. So if this is the first time you're kind of hearing about ARC, or if you heard about it and kind of wanted to know more, definitely thank you for joining us this morning. ARC 3.0 is a learning cohort, and that builds on the better practices of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that optimizes core practices into human-centered design exercises. Organizations will participate in weekly workshops, and I will share an outreach packet soon in the chat that has kind of a brief overview of the cohort, the curriculum structure and schedule, touching base and introducing our core leaders. So Anita, Jessica, and Rebecca are on today. You'll hear from each of them in just a moment. As well as any frequently asked questions around kind of time commitments, pricing, and things like that. And I'll also share out an interest form. So if anyone wants to commit today, please take the time to fill out that form, and we will get back to you as soon as possible with more information. But not to take up any more time, I will kick things over again to the core leaders. Again, we have Anita Russell, Jessica Merritt, and Rebecca Gilmer here on the call with us. And I will kick things over to them to kind of go into what to expect for ARC 3.0.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get things started just to kind of give a description of the anti-racism activation portion that I manage in the program. And so a lot of things that Fred just talked about and what this is what this work is really all about are the things that grounded me.
Anita, I think you might have muted yourself. There we go.
For that.
We want to hear from you.
I'm so sorry. So I was just basically talking about how I'm very much in alignment with what the Force Fund is all about and their approach to anti-racism in general. And there are specific reasons why I wanted to become a part of this. And I've gotten a lot of benefit out of it from myself. But what I want to talk about is the portion of it that I crafted, which is the anti-racism incubator. And I sort of took a coaching approach when I put this program together, and I created it as a journey across this anti-racism activation bridge. And I divided that journey into some very specific milestones. And those milestones actually represent what are the foundational components that make up the anti-racism incubator. And those 6 milestones are engaging in critical self-reflection, finding your courage, listening in authentic conversation, connecting in authentic relationship, leveraging personal accountability, and maximizing social impact. So the whole entire point of this bridge motif is kind of getting people to think about this as a journey and think about what their current situation is and asking this question, do I know what I don't know? When I think about the issue of racism, when I think about the issue of discrimination and how all of these things show up in everyday life, do I really have an understanding of what that actually looks like? And so what are those things that I don't even know that I don't know? And then what is that ideal situation for me? And kind of posing the question, am I able to put my faith, if you will, in a different type of future? And how do I work towards that different type of future? And those are the 2 extremes. What is my current situation? What is that ideal situation? And the anti-racism activation portion of it actually resides in that space in between those 2. So I kind of take people on this journey of asking themselves, what if we were to seek social impact change through the art of deep conversation, personal transformation, and accountability? What would that actually look like? And so it's about this being a transformational journey that is for those individuals who truly desire a deeper understanding of themselves and how they connect to others under the current system that we're operating under, and how do I go about cultivating change from the inside of me under these systemic and institutional racism and historical inequalities. And it was designed to be appropriate for individuals, organizations, businesses, and intact teams, but with the idea of having these individuals come into this program, go through the process, and then take what they learn and influence, if you will, their own organization to kind of move that organization in a different direction, if you will. So I'm just going to end by discussing what the 6 benefits of the Antiracism Incubator Cohort. The first one is engaging in that critical self-reflection. And the whole entire point is for you as an individual to gain understanding of your own thoughts, beliefs, and ideas about race and racism, and then recognize what it merges in your words, actions, and behavior. So I created this as a very personal journey. And then the second one is finding the courage to own your discomfort zone, because a lot of the things that we talk about in this space are very uncomfortable. But if you're not willing to walk through the discomfort and recognize that it is a key to your transformational success. And then listening in authentic conversation, listening for the purpose of understanding, not for the purpose of arguing or debating, but to harmonize lived experiences with historical truths. The fourth one is connecting an authentic relationship. And I think that is one of the really, really powerful pieces of all of this work that we do, is having that ability to connect an authentic relationship and accepting that true allyship is not a noun. It's actually an active verb. So it's about what are you doing? Number 5 is leveraging your personal accountability and developing a personal transformation strategy towards anti-racism. So it becomes personal, but at the same time, we have these individuals who are members of organizations. They can then take that all of these ideas that they're activating and take them into their own organization and be an influential presence there. So it's leveraging that accountability, and then finally maximizing social impact. And the whole entire point is to go from that personal transformation, building on relationships, taking action, and empowering that personal accountability, and then being able to use that and walk in the shoes, if you will, of an influential individual who really believes in and is now grounded in anti-racism activation. So that's in general how I sort of constructed the program. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of reading. We look at videos, we do exercises and all of that. And all of it is designed for people to take that journey across the anti-racism activation bridge. So if anybody has any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer.
Don't see any questions in the chat right now, but just kind of as we're walking through this, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. I did drop the info packet in the chat, but I'm going to just share the kind of curriculum schedule and overview just so folks can kind of get a baseline of what, like, again, the time commitment and things look like for that.
Bree, it looks like we have a question regarding how many staff from one organization are able to attend for the cohort. I don't know if that's something we'll touch on later, but.
Yeah, sorry. The switch between the screen share and regular Zoom. Any number of participants in an organization can absolutely join. The cost is based off of organization. So we could definitely, you wanted to reach out, I can drop everyone's contact information into the chat here. So if there are any additional follow-up questions around that, like your organization is definitely interested, but there are 5 of you versus kind of just a one-on-one, we can definitely talk more offline. But anyone from kind of an organizational standpoint, or if you're just wanting to do this on an individual level, welcome to open up to everyone.
And we've actually had that, Bree, you'll recall, just last session with ARC 2.0, what was it, 3 people from that nonprofit faith-based organization in the DC area all joined.
But the structure of the curriculum is based off a 20-week time period. Weekly sessions would take place Fridays from 10 a.m. to noon. There will be some in-person sessions. Right now, I think nothing set in stone, but incubator sessions 1 and 5, sometimes in person. Obviously wanted to make this available to anybody. So on an accessibility level, to provide it and host it on Zoom. So again, like Rebecca just mentioned, there were some folks from the DC area that were able to join last year's cohort. But to have kind of the discussions that are held in the incubator sessions and the reading discussions, like I think the momentum of those always get going better in a in-person setting. So again, while most of this is offered online, there will be some in-person sessions just to be able to not only have a more thorough conversation, but be able to kind of connect with other folks in the cohort on a little more personal level than just kind of seeing everyone in their Zoom boxes. But then at the end of the cohort, there'll be a graduation ceremony, and participants of the cohort will receive a digital badge and a certificate of completion. And then once folks kind of make the commitment to sign up for the cohort, there'll be a syllabus and learning outcomes and goals that will be shared with the participants of the cohort. I just wanted to provide this as if someone's like, what are the time restrictions and the commitment for this? Again, Fridays from 10 to noon and over the course of the 20 weeks.
Thanks for that, Bree. So Thea, I saw that you just posted a question. What do you suggest to motivate people who are in organizations who are neutral or skeptical about the need to combat racism to participate in the cohort? First, I think that that's an excellent question, and I'm going to just quickly introduce myself, and then I'm going to go to your question, Thea, and then I'm going to jump in with some other fun stuff. So I'm Dr. Jessica Merritt. I am the president and co-founder of Care-Based Leadership. I have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for way too long. It seems like it's over 2 decades. Before it was cool, when people just used to call it multicultural affairs. So I've been in this work for a long time with lots of ebbs and flows. And I say that not to brag about anything, but to really say that this is something that I'm really committed to, right? To making sure that we have spaces that are equitable and inclusive where any person can thrive. So I want to go to Thea's question because what I specialize in is data. I have a PhD in foundations of education. I specialize in research and measurement. So I'm a numbers nerd, but I also like to tell stories. And one of the things that sometimes people need is a bottom line reason for doing something, right? Sometimes the idea of it's just the right thing to do doesn't motivate everyone. So if people are neutral or skeptical, one of the things that I like to say is, what did the numbers tell you? Right? Whether it's profit numbers, whether it's participation numbers, whether it's engagement numbers, production numbers, there's always a number that you can utilize to find the motivation for people. So I would say maybe we go there, Thea, and we look at what the numbers say in your organization and how that can motivate people to participate, right? So we make sure we're connecting the dots so we find not just motivation, but reasons that this could be particularly influential or impactful for your organization. Feel free to continue to message questions too. So like I said, I specialize in data. One of the things that we don't often think about is data, but it impacts everything we do. For all the nonprofits that we work with, a lot of your data impacts how much money you get when you're requesting money, how you're defining what works and what doesn't work, the efficacy of the things that you're doing. And that's no different with diversity, equity, inclusion, or anti-racism. And so what I do in the cohort is really go through things and help you understand how to address inclusion and anti-racism in a meaningful way with data. So we talk about qualitative data, which is kind of the stories and the words that people use, the story of your organization and what's happened. We do quantitative data, which is the numbers, right? We talk about how you collect it, how you can utilize it, when it's beneficial, even down to how to include it in grants or annual reports as necessary. And then we talk about the implementation and structure of the way that you collect data in your organization. You'll have the opportunity to meet with me one-on-one so we can talk about specifically what you do in your organization, but we'll also talk about things in terms of the overall cohort and best practices in terms of collecting data around inclusion, diversity, equity, and employee engagement and participation. So that's kind of my jam. I love it. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone individually, but please feel free to ask questions or put something in the chat and we can make sure that all your questions are answered. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, sorry. Bria, I wasn't sure if you're coming off mute. There you go.
Sorry. And then
No
just to
worries.
kind of round out the discussion around kind of the overview of ARC. So again, Anita takes on the incubator sessions. Jessica comes in from a data perspective. And then we also have Rebecca Gilmer on that will lead everyone through a reading series discussion. So Rebecca, I don't know if you wanted to jump in and give a little more insight on that.
Thank you, Bree. And I always enjoy hearing both Jessica and Anita. I know them as women committed to this work and wanting to give their best as we join hands together. I'm the president and founder of Rivka Associates, and Rivka essentially means to secure or to connect. And that's what we attempt to do. I, like many of you, have been in conversations that have gone nowhere. I've engaged work that has done little to push the needle forward. And so I'm a part of this because I believe we have great potential to make a difference. You know, it's been a decade since the murder of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, everything got big, right? Everything got important. And we heard people of prominence express shock. How could this be? How could this be? And now it's died down. It's not nearly at top of mind anymore, yet it's just as critical, the realities we live in. I recently heard someone describe race like having a lanyard with a fob that works on doors that work electronically. And so we're all wearing this fob. And some people just walk straight through the doors and they go, well, all doors open. The doors are all open. They all open. And others go, I just can't get through here. And so there's a different reality. What I have found with those who truly engage the work of this anti-racism coalition, they talk about life change. They say things like, I hadn't thought about these things this way. They express curiosity, they express heartache, they express some things that they are thinking about differently. They also say, okay, this is familiar, and now I'm connecting the dots. My role in this is to help facilitate those conversations, and we bring alongside everything that Anita and Jessica offer. We bring alongside that just a bank of reading. And we are continually learning and continue to adapt as our environment changes, but also as we discover how we can maybe do this better each time. And so that affects the reading that we have everyone do. but that's my role, to facilitate that and to give people a place where they can authentically ask their questions, make their comments, have those conversations that sometimes they have been afraid to have. So that's how the three of us work together.
Talking on mute. But thank you so much again to Anita, Jessica, and Rebecca for taking the time today to kind of give us a little more insight on what to expect from ARC 3.0. If there are any questions, please again drop them into the chat. I did drop my email in there as well, so if there's any individualized questions that folks aren't comfortable with asking in a group setting, please feel free to reach out and I can connect everyone to, again, the core leadership team. We'll also be hosting a session on January 24th, which is next Friday. It's kind of an info session / kind of lead up into officially kicking off ARC 3.0. So based off today, if you're looking through any of the ARC outreach packet materials, or if there are any other lingering questions, please feel free to join us in that space. Again, Anita, Jessica, and Rebecca will also be on there. Same kind of vibe of this call, but just maybe getting a little more into the meat and potatoes of what the curriculum is offering. And again, more of kind of the flow and structure of the cohort in general. So I'll drop the registration link for that session here in the chat if anyone is willing and available, or again, has any follow-up questions on what you heard today. But we're really excited again to kind of keep working through and shaping out what ARC looks like overall. So again, like I think Rebecca mentioned, like, ARC 2.0 looks a little different from what ARC 3.0 is going to look like, and, 4.0, 5.0, and so on. So really excited to kind of let the folks that come in and participate in the organizations that take the time to kind of dig deeper into that DEI focus area, help really shape the cohort and kind of what to expect out of things. So again, I just want to take the time to echo thanks everyone for being on today. And again, if there are any questions, please feel free to continue to drop them in the chat. And if there are any closing remarks from Anita, Jessica, or Rebecca, I'm happy to pass the baton before we kind of close out and hand things back to GPMB team.
Please, go ahead.
I'm just going to jump in really quick because I did get a question on direct message, but I think it could be beneficial for the group. It was what are some of the ways to encourage people to even think about applying? And there are three things that come to mind. The first is looking at people in your organization that could particularly benefit from what we're doing. So I would say anybody who's involved in any sort of customer service, any sort of data collection, or any sort of programming, understanding how to put anti-racism practices into those, or understanding data better, or getting a base of understanding would be great. I think that second, understanding who in your organization could potentially contribute to the discussion and who would benefit from being in this space with other people. So what I mean by that is, do you have any DEI professionals? Do you have anyone that's interested in diversity, equity, or inclusion on any scale, that you want to make sure that it's kind of piquing their interests? And I would also suggest that if there's someone in your organization that could use this as a professional development opportunity, as a way to say, oh my goodness, this may be an area that I'm interested in. This could be something that I want to talk about. This could be an area for me to expand my skills and my knowledge. I would definitely encourage them to participate. If there's anybody that directly deals with data, I'd be happy to jump on a call with them and talk about how this could connect with the work that they're doing or how they could benefit from it. And I'm sure Anita or Rebecca would be happy to do that also. But send them to the info session. I think that's probably the fourth way. I would say send anyone who you think could benefit from any of this to the info session where they can connect with us one-on-one, because sometimes a personal connection can aid in the process if people are feeling any sort of fear or I would say, I'm trying to put this in the best way, if there's any kind of feelings of discouragement to doing it because they're afraid of what they might say or what they don't know, send them to the info session. We're really nice people, and we can answer all the questions. So that's the fourth way.
And I just wanted to add to that. First of all, I agree with everything that Jessica just said. And I think one of the beauties of the way that we structure this overall program is that we do have those two components. And so when you look at the piece of it that I own, so to speak, it's really focused on the individual. It's focused on that personal journey. And then what Jessica takes a look at is how does that individual now go into their organization and function as an influential force. And so I really love the way that those two pieces are dovetailed together. So I focus on what is my personal journey going to look like, because who I am as a functioning member of society is just as important as who I am as a functioning member of a particular organization. So we kind of very, very nicely dovetail all of that information together. And I actually popped my website in the chat box as well, just to give you a little bit of an understanding of the coaching approach that I take. I didn't mention in the beginning that I am a master life coach. And the work that I do came out of my George Floyd origin story. Specifically, my George Floyd origin story took me in a space of really helping people to get a deeper understanding of who they are as an individual and how do I function personally in my family life, my community life, my church life, and my business to be able to bring about social change.
Thank you so much, Anita. Rebecca, is there anything else you wanted to add?
You know, if I were hearing this, and I'm hearing terms like DEI, you know, well-worn terms, if I'm considering the political environment, if I'm listening to public statements of how businesses are backing up some institutions, some institutions of higher learning, all the things, I think I would wonder how is this going to do me any real good that I could really apply? How would whatever happens within me, how would that really make a difference? Has environment changed so much that we're sliding back to a point that no matter what I learn in something like this, it may not do me any good? And I would love to hear both Anita and Jessica respond to that. My response is that it's as long as we are mortals on this earth, and especially in this country, it is relevant in ways seen and unseen. We are people who want to make a difference. That's why we have gone into nonprofit work, right? Most of us, small businesses and nonprofit, we want to make a difference. And this thing has been eating us as a country and as individuals, and it's real. And so what we are presenting with the Antiracism Coalition ARC, what we are presenting gives individuals, gives organizations a better chance at doing what I believe many of them already want to do. But anyway, I would love to hear Jessica and Anita respond as well.
That's a great question, Rebecca. I mean, an observation. And one of the things that we were kind of chatting about prior to letting all the participants in is I know Fred was talking about what's going on in billion-dollar companies, right? And they're talking about changing language and what to do in response to the new administration and what's anticipated. And I think that we're at the same level, whether your nonprofit is going grant to grant or you are a billion-dollar company. We're all continuously responding to what's happening socially, right? Continuously responding to what's happening in the lives of the people that support our organizations and that are impacted by the work that we do. So on a base level, I will say, from what I've heard in multiple industries, I think that people are right now afraid on a multitude of levels. Racially, economically, socially, I think there's a lot of not only indifference, but I think that there is a lot of confusion over what's right, what's wrong, where do we go from here, what do we do next? And I think that's part of what we have to help people understand how to do. I don't think that every solution is cookie cutter. I think that we need to provide unique solutions for each organization and oftentimes the individuals in that organization. I think those are some of the tools that we provide in ARC. For me, I will say, I've been in this work at owning 2 independent companies through a Trump administration. And a lot of my clients were engineering firms who relied on government funding. And so I'm saying that to say that, 1, it's 100% possible to make it through. 2, every administration has changes. Right there, when new people come in at the helm of any administration, any organization, there's going to be changes and they're going to filter down. And we have to figure out, 1, how we adapt to them, 2, how we adjust, and 3, can we live within that environment, right? Can we effectively work in that environment? You need the tools to be able to do that. And this is a shameless, again, plug for ARC and answering that question, but looking at the individual perspective, right, and understanding where you are, looking at the data-driven perspective and research-based perspective, understanding where your organization is, and then having an academic foundation and understanding how the world is defining exactly what you're trying to say or what you're feeling or what you're experiencing. All of those 3 components are very, very important. And so I say that all to say, the climate right now is so loud that it almost seems silent, if that makes any sense. The messages from everywhere can be so confusing that sometimes you just need a space to process it all and the tools to be able to process it. And so I think that ARC is one of those places, right, that you can try to do that. I think through the individual meetings, through the group meetings, through the experiences, we're really trying to unravel what's tangled. So hopefully that helped and answered your question, Rebecca.
And I would add to that, the reality is this is a very uncomfortable place that we're in right now. And you have individuals who feel very uncomfortable even having these conversations, even if they don't necessarily agree with sort of the things on the other side of the fence, if you will. But there's a certain level of discomfort that they have in possibly even sitting down and having a conversation. And so because I recognize that discomfort, when I created my portion of it, the Antiracism Incubator, I specifically looked at it through a coaching lens. Because looking at it through that coaching lens is one of the ways that I can enable people to kind of step right into that discomfort. And sometimes that discomfort means I have to step outside of myself and really look at this through the lens of another individual, the lens of another person's experiences, another community's experiences, in order for me to even understand who I am. And there can be discomfort in that. But the whole idea for me is grounding it in very profound coaching practices, if you will, that enable people to kind of walk through that and be able to recognize what are those things that lie within me that I could potentially want to change. Because there are lots of individuals out there who simply don't know what to do, but they're not in agreement with what the some of those conversations that are being held out there, but they just don't know what to do, and they perhaps feel uncomfortable even looking into it. So I specifically work with individuals to kind of get them to step right into their discomfort zone so that they can come out as a different individual and to be able to have a different type of impact.
Thank you both, Anita and Jessica, and thank you too, Fasha, for your comment in the chat.
Thank you all so much. That was very powerful. And again, I think the overarching message for me here is that we all know this is hard work. We all know that it's ever changing. It's the part where we are promising each other a safe space to go through it, and be respectful and acknowledge expertise and experience. So really grateful to you all for providing that space and looking forward to it. All right, if you have any other questions, please feel free to continue adding to the chat or reach out to any of the email addresses that we've put into the chat as well. I'm going to pass it over to our GPNP Director, Emily Francis, to go over some ecosystem updates and policy updates.
Thank you so much, Christine. And thank you so much to the ARC team for your presentation. There are definitely some policy updates that are going to really focus on changes to DEI policy for GPNP in January and coming months, especially when we see news headlines around like Meta deciding to strip the companies, especially Instagram and Facebook, which are two of the most popular social media platforms, of any sort of DEI policy. And so in terms of how these communications are taking place, I really think creating spaces like this is more important than ever because it is such a direct connection between individual learning and how we're educating and connecting with each other, and where we're seeing that systemic change at a broader scale. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And before I jump in, I do want to turn it over to a member of GPNP to make an announcement about the Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit coming up on February 22nd. So Thea, please feel free to come off mute and jump in real quick. Uh-oh, I'm not able to hear you. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. The black and white the Black and White Reunion will present the 27th annual Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit on February 22nd. The theme is People, Power, and Progress, Community Engagement for Justice and Accountability. It will be held at the Community College of Allegheny campus on the north side. We're looking forward to having people present as well as attend workshops as well as attend. I put the contact information in the chat. Please, we welcome the public.
Thank you so much. And it sounded like the information towards the end was cutting out a little bit for me, but if anyone wasn't able to hear, the information is in the chat. It's the 27th Annual Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit, presented by the Black and White Reunion, and it's on February 22nd. We'll be sharing that information this Friday in our newsletter as well for anybody who's interested in additional details. I'll be very brief. I'm only touching on two things in our ecosystem / public policy update for today. But both of them are extremely important. So I wanted to, narrow the focus for this morning and go a little deeper on each of these opportunities. So the first is the AI for Social Impact cohorts that are coming up beginning the week of January 20th. I've received a lot of questions and interests, and how can we sponsor sign up inquiries over the last week especially. So we are putting like a hard deadline on this Friday as applications closing, because we do have to get started next week with the cohorts. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me directly, emily@forbesfunds.org, and let me know which of the cohorts might be the best fit for you and your organization. As a very quick overview, all of the cohorts are going to have 4 different benefits for participants. So one, especially in a year where there are a lot of different moving pieces and things to keep track of, respond to, and from an administrative perspective, but also from like a mental capacity perspective, AI can be really helpful for saving time and streamlining processes and operations. Hands-on support from CMU professors and business owners who are experts on AI and navigating it and how it can be applied to the social impact sector. There are a lot of platforms that I would say aren't necessarily ethical and accountable in terms of protecting your data. And so knowing how to navigate all of this new technology, protect your organization, but also the people you serve, and choose the right resources or right tools is a big part of especially our cohort 1 and cohort 2 conversations. And then access to the tools in perpetuity for the next year for anybody who signs up for the cohort. So if you sign up for cohort 1 and then choose to do cohort 2 later in the year, the amount that you're paying for cohort 1 gets discounted from your cohort 2 fee, because these really are meant to build on each other. So we're really trying to make these as cost effective for organizations as possible to kind of get in at the ground floor for this technology. And then the last piece, which I've heard as the most valuable piece, is really collaboration across nonprofits of all different sizes, organizations with different mission focus, because this technology is actually, and I really don't say this lightly, it sounds very like cliche, but redefining what is actually possible for nonprofit organizations, because we spend so much time doing humanity-centered design to really make sure that the resources and opportunities and services that we're providing respond to the needs of individuals. And there's a lot of kind of chameleoning or like funding Sudoku that has to happen as part of that, where you're beholden to the needs and wants and like guardrails, right, of funders or partners or all these individuals. And it's a lot to keep track of. And so figuring out how a tool can be utilized to take some of those pieces off your plate and then spend more time building relationships and doing some of that deeper work has been really huge for the participants in our first 6 cohorts, technically, since we did 2 rounds of them. So again, the link is in the chat for registration. Please feel free to email me. I've pretty much cleared my calendar for today and tomorrow to be able to respond to folks' inquiries about the AI cohorts. So we can really hit the ground running. I can get the information to everyone by like Thursday of this week once they're registered, Friday at the latest, and you'll be prepped for things to start next week. The second thing I wanted to mention is that we have our Public Policy Committee meeting for January this Thursday from 1 to 2:30 p.m. We're covering a lot because this is going to be the week before the inauguration of our next president. And so some of the things that are rollovers or carryovers from our policy committees last year that are still relevant include the following. So an asset map of essential resources and how to keep this up to date. This is not only, websites and links. This is the people in the nonprofit community who are experts on specific policy areas at the federal and state level that we know are going to need to be tapped for their expertise in the coming months and years. Overview of Project 2025 and policy implications, where we can see or anticipate things getting introduced at the legislative level versus within an executive branch in terms of how a program or policy is being implemented, since that's where a lot of those decisions get made versus the legislature, and then what types of rulings as cases are being brought to the Supreme Court we can kind of keep track of. And those are just the federal pieces. There are also pieces of legislation that have been introduced this year, especially that will affect nonprofits. And I'll go into that in just a second, but really focusing on local, state, and federal needs for policy analysis and expertise can feel extremely overwhelming if you feel like you have to do that for your organization and the people you serve by yourself. And the purpose of the GPNP Public Policy Committee is to really highlight that not everyone has to be the expert. We just have to have the experts at the table to be able to share up to the committees that they're a part of, and also educate those that are connected to that work and will definitely valuably inform it. And Bree, as I'm finishing up the policy update, if you want to launch the poll, I just want to make sure that we don't lose an opportunity for feedback from folks who are on the call and listening as I'm sharing. The other pieces are updates on Justice 40 BIL and IRA, funding or buckets of funding, or equivalent opportunities that are in the education, housing, DEI, immigration, refugee services and supports, LGBTQ+, healthcare, etc. Since we've been seeing a lot of absolute media fodder, yes, but there are policies and conversations about introducing certain things related to Project 2025 and unrelated to Project 2025 that the purpose purpose of this conversation is really to kind of narrow what are the things that I really should be focusing on that are in my control, what's not in my control. And as I've been hearing in a lot of seminars, even from experts and currently elected officials, we're really kind of in a wait and see pattern. But that doesn't mean that we can't, prepare a response versus having to react when different decisions are made or things do come up. Federal and state law and policy knowledge, again, kind of like civics 101 resources or like some sort of asynchronous curriculum around that, scenario planning, and then what can our organization sign on to or sign up for as far as updates, and what is the National Council of Nonprofits Independent Sector, PANO, thinking about some of these things. What are some opportunities for us to get involved or have somebody as a representative of GPNP, in different counties of Southwest PA participate in those conversations to make sure that they're relevant and their implications do apply to us. So looking up at how GPNP is going to take on some of this work versus convene those to do some of these pieces. This is the list from the previous page reorganized. We've also done convenings of CEOs post-election and are going to be continuing to provide a space for those conversations. I think some of the ARC cohort learnings and share outs from this morning around like having a space to process is huge. And we've heard the same thing from CEOs around like their policy work and their advocacy work and their connections with community members, especially as they're having to quell, so much uncertainty from the people they serve in a lot of different ways. So one of the items that is a potential to do or opportunity is from the National Council of Nonprofits, and this came up at the PANO Public Policy Committee meeting last Thursday, and it's a letter to the members of the 119th Congress, really highlighting what needs to be known about the nonprofit sector. If you go through this list, and Bree's going to put the link in the chat to this, it basically overviews, what role we play in terms of the economy. So for the US, it's about 12% of the economy. For Pennsylvania, it's about 15% of employed individuals are employed by nonprofit organizations. That's not including the individuals that we serve. So it's actually a huge group of constituents that nonprofit organizations are connected to daily. The second piece is really focusing on the connectedness of nonprofits, and it says this kind of lightly. I wish it were a little more firm in some ways about highlighting nonprofit leaders as experts on communities, because this is a letter to a group of individuals that were voted into office and need to be responsive at some level to the needs of their constituents and their feedback and their wishes. And so highlighting nonprofits as a real power player in that space that knows about the needs and also is in a position to partner with government proactively to address those things, I don't think can be overstated. And I that's kind of like the drum that I'll be beating in my outreach for the next few months, certainly, but consistently. And then finally, knowing that we don't all have the capacity to do advocacy and policy and grassroots organizing and also building relationships with elected officials. This is where the capacity building assessment allows you to kind of pick and choose what are the things that you can really step into, and then what are the things that you know that you need support from another GPNP member or sort of like matchmaking or partnering to do different things. The purpose of GPNP is not to recreate a subcommittee on education or housing or immigration and refugee support, since we know that those conversations are happening in other spaces, but connecting a member that really wants to be active in one of those areas and making sure that they have the ability to do so and share that expertise back to other members as those conversations occur is really important. So with that, thank you for joining us. I hope to see many of you on the AI cohorts next week, and before that on our Thursday Public Policy Committee meeting for GPNP in January. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to Christine to close out the conversation this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. It sounds like we have a lot of great resources and opportunities to kick off the year strong and really work on our impact this year. Thank you all so much for being here. We will not have a call next week in observance of Martin Luther King Day, but we look forward to seeing you the week after that to continue this journey. Please reach out if you have any questions, and have a great week.